Hey everyone, welcome back to the Can I Ask You a Question podcast. Each week on the podcast, we are asking questions and unlocking wisdom through solo episodes with myself or deep dive interviews with the most interesting people in my world. Today's question is a big one. It's, regarding the abortion debate. What's your moral, biological, and political policy on abortion? And you'll see why I add all those in the way I do there. It's the question that we're going to explore. I think many of us have opinions on the area of abortion. It's incredibly serious and important, but I've realized after all these years of having opinions that I myself did not have a truly clear and definable policy, as if I were running for office and I needed to state it clearly. And so I worked on it, and I'll share with you where I am at on my own, and hopefully help you to establish your own policy and position on this incredibly real world and important issue. Disclaimer, once again, this is not, inherently a political episode, but nonetheless, I just want to do the disclaimer that all the views are my own, as just a personal individual, a private citizen, not connected with anybody else or any other organization. And with that, as I said before, it's a super heavy and serious subject. Not every episode is going to be like this, but it's on my mind. It's in the news right now, and I'm guessing it's something you're thinking about as well. I know, last week's episode that came out was Trump versus Kamala, and weighing that out and seeing the pros and cons of both candidates and how they fared on certain key categories, 12 categories it ended up being, and this is one of those in the news right now in the conversation. What are their positions on abortion? And with Roe v. Wade being overturned, I believe it was 2 years ago, suddenly we actually do have a lot more of a say, and we can actually change laws and have there's a cultural struggle and a cultural dialogue going on. And therefore, I want to jump in and talk about it. And like I said, other weeks we'll get back to self-development, we'll get back to wealth building and health and other things. But in this season, it was on my mind. I figured it might be on yours, and I thought, let's dive into it. There's a bit of a story here when it comes to this issue. As a Christian, I've always grown up knowing that abortion was wrong. But as a young person, I didn't have any children of my own. I was young, I was single, and I'd never gone through the somewhat, for lack of a better term, awkward process of learning thoroughly about the development of a baby inside a woman. I'm sure I learned some in my biology class or whatever, being homeschooled, but I don't think the average young guy or even young gal really sits down and studies week after week the development of a baby in pregnancy. It's usually something you do later in life, and that was definitely the case for me. But here's the thing. This left the idea of a baby inside a woman's womb very vague, and while I believed it was morally wrong, personally, I never felt the moral outrage I saw so many of my fellow Christians experience. I knew it was wrong, but it was this kind of vague idea, and it didn't hit me at an emotional level. Fast forward over a decade, and I'm a married father of a beautiful little girl. And through the process, I learned a lot about the development of a baby. Suddenly, you're a lot more motivated to see, what is my baby doing? How far are they in their development and growth when you're about to have one? On the sad part and the difficult part, my wife and I also experienced two early miscarriages. I think there's qualifications for the names and the times. I don't know them super great, so I'm just calling it a miscarriage. It was not intended, not desired. And so we had, two babies, and we knew we were pregnant and excited about it. And then she lost those children. And together we felt the very real loss of the lives that were growing inside her that had been cut short, as happens to so many women and, friends and people out there and just across the world. And it's painful and it's hard. And we walked through that. Especially in hindsight, this losing of our two unborn children taught me to appreciate the value of even the earliest developed baby. And to this day, I still feel the poignant reality of a life unrealized on this earth. Sometimes, as I believe many people that have lost children to miscarriage or And my heart goes out to those that carried them much longer. And I just believe that loss and feeling would be even more poignant. But I think about what, given, if they had not miscarried, the inevitable life that they would have led and the inevitable moments and joy we would have had with them. And my faith tells me that they are a living being and that a human, and that I will see them in heaven. And I look forward to that day. But help me realize on a moral, on an ethical, on a conceptual level, how valuable a life begun is and how sad when it's cut short that is. Okay, fast forward again to the last few weeks of politics, and I began to grapple with the issue of abortion again from a political standpoint. I wrestled with it, and I came up with a political plan that I felt might really work to unify us in the nation. And it's a good plan, and I'll share some of it with you in today's show. But something happened in the last little bit of time in my final research to write and prepare to share with you on this episode of the show. I went onto a popular site for pregnancy, and I watched their video of what a 24-week baby looks like, and I saw the level of miraculous, scientifically unmatchable complexity already at work in that human in miniature. 24 weeks is an important number in the abortion debate. 24 weeks is the line where even liberal, pro-choice friendly medical professionals agree that the child has up to a 75% chance of survival outside the womb, should they, for example, be delivered via C-section and brought early into this world. There's still a huge chance of survivability. It's where some draw the line to ban abortions after that date. They call it the age of viability, and it's the law of the land in multiple states currently, including, I believe, California. It's actually a line I considered suggesting as a political solution as well. It makes a certain sense. When they can survive on their own, that's when we'll treat them as citizens and as their own individual life, and we'll protect them. But keep listening on as I studied, as I looked at it. But they are, at this age, at 24 weeks, they are undeniably a human being with an almost fully developed body. And I'm seeing this in the visualizations, the videos of these weeks, that just needs to keep growing, and lungs that need to get stronger. It, at 24 weeks, is a full baby. And I think, we're not going to get graphic on this episode, but to think that we actually have abortions legal at this age, and when you look at the development of the baby, it is pretty horrendous. I kept watching and reading week 23, 22, 21, week 20, week 19 and 18 and 17 and 16 and 15. As a guy anyway, you have this idea that babies are pretty much just a little undeveloped blob until close to birth. It's also what some pro-abortion proponents imply as well. But as I watched these videos and I counted down in the age, my stomach started to get queasy at just how reasonable I had felt 24 weeks was as a political compromise. I'll explain my thinking on that later. But after all I've learned and been through, it wasn't until this exercise that I realized the level of development and life that I was talking about. When I was thinking about maybe we make the line 24 weeks, and we'll look at some of that. And I saw what 9 weeks earlier looked like and their level of development. My stomach was queasy at thinking that I would potentially suggest that, because they were still very much a baby. Abortion-friendly doctors claim a child can't feel pain until after 24 weeks. My little bit of research, I think that is insanity. But others believe they can feel pain by week 15, and still others believe it's much earlier. Here's a little invitation for you. Go online, watch a 2-minute non-political video, a video for parents that are expecting and excited for their child, that outlines and visualizes the development of their 15-week-old baby. And you will, I believe, see what I see: a tiny human being in miniature. It's not anything like the undeveloped child that we are made to believe. You're seeing a formed and developed human being and a baby, and it's just easy to see in those visualizations. As odd as this may sound, I think we respect life in part based upon the size of the living creature. Most people would be appalled at the idea of killing a whale, but they don't bat an eye at the killing of, for say, a bug, an insect. It's small, it feels insignificant, its lifetime is short. And I actually think that part of my struggle, as silly as that sounds, and I don't think I'm alone in this, to properly value the life of a developing child had to do with the fact that they are so small. When you look on some of those sites, it will say your child is, for example, at 15 weeks, that miniature human is only the size of a pear. So I think a pear is about the size of a fist, and it feels so unreal. But when you set aside the size and you look at the shape and the form, and biologically what is going on in the baby and the level of complexity, things begin to change. When you look at the visualizations of a 15-week baby, they are a little human with an immense amount of complex biological systems already functioning. And as some doctors say, as some researchers say, according to most of my research on the pain actually came from one article on WebMD, I think a pretty kind of general middle of the ground website. They can probably feel pain now at 15 weeks and much earlier. I continued my downward journey in the development of a child. And to me, and I would encourage you, if you're interested, go on one of these sites that will show you week by week, as if you were having a child of your own, the development of your baby. But look at it in reverse. Look at it from the latest possible time you could conceive of an abortion and go downwards. And it would, to me, that reversed view of seeing this was moving and eye-opening. So I continued downward in the journey of development, and I looked at week 14, week 12, 13, week 12, week 11, week 10. Personally, it's probably around 10 weeks and under that, to my eyes, the child starts looking anything less than a little baby. But a whole host of biological miracles unreplicatable by science have already occurred weeks earlier. You hear me say that term miraculous throughout, and I'm a person who believes in literal miracles. I'm a spiritual person, and there is an element to that, but I'm using it in the most broadly just poetic sense here, that there are just things that science cannot do that are happening inside of every healthy mother's womb when she conceives, and it's unreplicatable by science. We don't know how to do it. We can't achieve it on our own. We can't just make a human being. It's miraculous. I don't know any other word for it. It's jaw-dropping, astounding, if you want to say it that way. And so I went down to around the 10 weeks. Yeah, they start to look not as much like a little human being, but already the miracles that are going on biologically are amazing. Go down to week 9. Week 8 and week 7, and the beginning of week 7, the start, during week 6, it's an incredibly important milestone. It's here at the 7th week that others believe the child can feel pain through the portion of their brain called, if I'm pronouncing it right, the thalamus. It's here, or actually in the week earlier, that a fetal heartbeat can be detected in the newly conceived baby. This is a crucial humanitarian line. It's the moment where a living human being has a detectable heartbeat and the possibility of feeling pain via the brain. It's an incredibly important line that during week 6, as you enter into week 7. I looked at week 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. As you get down to week 1 of birth, I was reminded / kind of surprised again to learn that because of how we count the weeks of a pregnancy and this is how we do it. We count it from the first day of a woman's last period. Week 1 and 2 of a pregnancy are actually before intercourse and conception, the conception of a child. It's a funny idea, but just to illustrate it, it means that a couple on their wedding night could be intimate for the first time And ironically, in terms of counting, it would be like they conceived 2 weeks before the wedding. You know, they in a Christian worldview, we wait for intimacy, for sex till after marriage. And they did that, and it's their wedding night. But how we count it, actually, it'd be as if they conceived 2 weeks before the wedding. We count it from the first day of the woman's last period. What this means is that when a child begins his crucial 7th week, on day 1 of the 7th week of its life, it's really only been 28 days or 4 weeks since conception. Only 28 days or 4 weeks since the time that a man and a woman were intimate together, conceived a child, and that process of the sperm meeting the egg and the egg traveling, I believe it's up or down the fallopian tube and into the uterus, and all of that journey and process to the point where we have a living human being with a brain that is developed enough to potentially feel pain, and the beginning development of what will become their heart that is beating. We call it the fetal heartbeat. It's only 28 days separation. When I realized that, when I discount the first 2 weeks, and I just realized how fast that they're beginning to develop, that was an important and meaningful point to me. And it made a lot of meaning for that marker of the first day of the 7th week. It's so important. One reason is because some proponents of abortion are just listening to a debate. It's part of what actually started all of this stuff. One person I was listening to, they make a big deal about how they don't care about the life of a simple cluster of cells. And that itself is a vast underappreciation of the vast biological miracle that really does begin at conception. But whatever the case, the time between conception and those few cells that are rapidly multiplying and a human being with a heartbeat and the potential to feel pain is 4 short weeks. I believe that, and think about it. Think about your experiences. Think about the conversations that you've had around abortion. Think about those that are pro-abortion. I think they vastly, as much as I feel like I'm aware of things, I had no idea how truly short that window of time is where you would say they don't really look a lot like a human. They don't have some of the features of a human being. They don't feel pain. That window is incredibly short. And I think I'm doing a disjustice to the amount of humanity and biological life that is happening in those 4 weeks. It would almost be a whole other episode just to focus on that. But I feel like that's blown out. It's made to be a long time. And yet it's so short. So that for that person that's like, I believe in that early phase of the development of what I'm calling a baby, a child, they call it, I think, a zygote. That's a very quick phase before then it transfers into the fetus, becoming called a fetus, or once again, I'm just calling it a child or a human being. Something in some of the debates I've been watching that was so clear and so cool, and it was, I feel like, universally pretty much acknowledged on both sides of the argument, is that biologically, from the moment of conception, that is a human being. It's not any other species, not any other thing. It is a human being. And gender is imprinted at conception. So it's a male or a female human being. It's going to develop, yes. It's going to need help to live up to a certain point, but it's a human being and it's alive. And those are super important things. And it very quickly leaves the place of what, if you want to call it that, unsophistication. Needless to say, after staring the biological reality in the face, the literal face of a child, the idea of that, it's revealed just how little wiggle room a decent person aware of these facts could have in considering the taking of that life. With this in mind, my thoughts on the moral and the biological and the political policy positions on abortion are going to be narrower and less, air quotes here, open-minded than I try to be on other issues. Not because I don't try to keep an open mind, but simply because the biological reality so overwhelmingly points towards one answer. My still developing political worldview is generally in favor of a more liberal federal government that makes room for a broad spectrum of political stances at the state government level. When I'm using liberal, I just mean that they have a really big circle that a lot of states with different views can live within, instead of being kind of winner takes all on a lot of things and dividing in that way. this is coupled with a pro small government view overall. Then it would be the idea that while the federal government would give space for the states, that the federal and the state and the local governments would give a huge amount of space just to the individual citizen and not come in there and try to outlaw general behaviors and things like that. Let me just admit it right now. You're going to see me wrestle with this general political view of less government and less outlawing of our decisions, and my belief that killing innocent human beings is something we fundamentally have to outlaw to remain and to maintain even a modicum of our humanity as a nation. Honestly, I had a very different version of this episode in my head because I was thinking of just basically politically and for what I had heard, but the biology, the reality of it forced me to change my political position. I was going to argue for a lot less government intervention to a certain degree, at least at the federal level. But I just don't see a lot of wiggle room on us approving the murder of human beings. If we can't protect that basic right, then I think what are we going to protect? And so it shifted my approach. It shifted my policy. And of course, I want to keep learning, keep growing, and it may develop or hopefully, if I can improve it. But I feel confident to share to you today. You might agree with me entirely when I'm done. You might disagree with me. My hope is at least to present a way of thinking about this topic that I believe can be helpful to you. When you're trying to present, I can't anticipate all of the angles that you're hoping I will address. I can't anticipate all of the questions you'll hope I'll answer. Send them to me. Reach out. I'd love to hear that, and then maybe I could. But on this one, I'm trying to, in some ways, mimic what I wish some of our politicians, how they might honestly and ethically and thoughtfully answer this. If I pretend it, because I am on a platform, I am publicly speaking. Pretend that I was on a political platform and I had to answer. Many times I'm not satisfied with the answers, or I feel like I'm not getting the whole story. And so I'm kind of doing a public policy announcement that I wish others would do. And that's kind of the angle we're taking on here. But that was my journey, and it forced what I can say publicly and where I would pick my standing ground on this issue. This process dramatically shifted it. And with that, let's dive in. Number one, I believe that we should review the morality, the biology, and the legality of this issue separately. I'm going to say that again. As we come to an issue, and as you come to see, as I lay out, I believe our spectrum of policy positions that we can take, and I'll tell you where I stand on it. I believe that we need to start by reviewing the morality, the biology, and the legality of the abortion issue separately. Why? Here's why. By reviewing these three issues separately, I believe we can achieve both greater clarity, and possibly room for different viewpoints. Honestly, I think that was written in version 1 of these notes. I don't see a huge amount of window for viewpoints. But this was the process that I took on there, that I broke it down. And I think I'm going to stick with the first part of that, is I believe that it allows us to have clarity, and I think to actually come to a more honest answer. I think when we really muddy up the morality, the science, the legality, I didn't come into what I would suggest for the punishment for someone that breaks the law. We didn't go into that. It starts becoming, and then there's the truly political side of this. What could actually get voted for, and how will that impact other issues, and empowering one party or giving the White House to another party. When we mix them up, it becomes so convoluted, and that's honestly where I feel like I've been for most of my life. Is that I had kind of an idea of what I thought I would like to say, but the other part of me was like, pragmatically, I want to hold back. I want to be coy. I don't because I want the home team to win politically, and I want us to be able to move forward to other issues. And I'm trying to kind of triage our ability to actually move things forward. And there's a place for that, I believe, if I'm making that clear. But on this show particularly, we're really trying to get down to, as much as we can, what is actually ethically and morally and spiritually right, what is actually biologically accurate and constitutionally true, and like really get down to not just what we could live with or some of that. We'll get to that later, but what is, after all our research and thought, what's the best answers that we can come up with. And to me, breaking them up separately and not having a bias, saying, oh, because I think if we already are leaning a certain way with the legality, it might bias what biology we accept and don't accept. And that arguably that happened to me too. The same with morality, but trying to separate them. And so that's point number one as we're looking at this, is I think we need to review the morality, the biology, and the legality separately. Number one, I believe, and this was as I reviewed it personally, that abortion is morally wrong. I believe that the unborn child inside of a woman is a living human being from the moment of conception, and the taking of their life is morally wrong. The only moral exception I can even conceive of are the exception that some is more in the law, but is the life of the mother or for the life of the child. There are apparently situations where, at least so I hear, I haven't researched this well enough, that there might be a situation where the mother has to basically choose to either die and allow her child to live, or abort her child and allow her to kill her child and allow her to live. That is a absolutely horrible ethical dilemma. And let's assume for a moment that she has other innocent children that need her. I guess on that one, it's kind of tying into the law a little bit. I do not feel like I have the knowledge or the wisdom to judge on that one. And so I actually kind of believe on a fundamental level that to force someone to give up their own life, to literally give up their own life to preserve another, that would be admirable. I think to call it morally wrong, that's tough. And then I guess I'm kind of bleeding into the law here. To call it illegal, I don't believe that. So I do believe that we shouldn't force someone to die. Okay. To obey a law. I think that would be almost cruel and unusual punishment. Apparently, when I say the life of the child, it sounds odd. Are there any exceptions for abortion? Yeah, the life of the child. What do you mean? What I mean is apparently, so I'm hearing, and I'm not aware of these, but apparently there are, I think one is called an ectopic pregnancy, and I may be wrong. This one may not be an absolutely fatal diagnosis, but apparently there are times when there is like 100% chance the child will not live. She cannot, the child cannot live. And so ending their life can be seen as a merciful thing to do. I think on this again, it's that to me, if there's any gray area in this issue, I think there's some gray area there. I think I could see it being merciful. I could also see someone of a really conservative bent saying, we're going to leave it all to God and we're going to just kind of let nature take its course. And so I believe that if that were the situation, it was truly verified any of the protections, I could see a moral justification for that. I definitely could see a legal justification for that. But this is a big clarification that many people in the movement, I'm a part of the conservative movement, they allow for this, and I think that morally this is not really super complicated. It's not allowed. I do not believe in the moral exception in the case of rape or incest. In preparation for this video, I watched other videos and heard from survivors of physical abuse like this, and that were pro-life. And I want to try to see, and I know it's an incredible tragedy, but it does not morally allow for the killing of an innocent life. The terrible thing that happened does not allow for morally for the killing of another life. They are two separate issues, and we should help that person who is a victim, but we should not enable them to then commit a crime against that unborn child. And so I don't believe in the moral exception, or as you'll see, a legal exception for rape or incest. I don't believe that financial trouble and even deep poverty is a moral excuse to abort your child. I don't believe that the fact that it would cause you mental health stress or challenge. I do not believe there's really any morally viable reason to take another innocent person's life. As I wrote here, that's because no one has the right to kill another innocent human being under any circumstances. I gave the exception of the life of the mother and the child, and I think let's put that in a small little box. Everything else, I do not believe that any human has the right to kill another innocent human being. I get this as a Christian from the Bible, the command against murder. But also I get this from just basic human decency that I believe tends to agree as well. I believe that generally speaking, the argument is they're not a human being, but as we're going to see biologically, that's not correct. For anyone but for any human being, for anyone that's alive anyways, we would all almost universally of any faith say, no, you can't kill them for any reason, even if, including if they had hurt you, including if, now self-defense is different, but including if it's going to cause you financial trouble. You can't kill another innocent life. And I guess if someone hurt you, they wouldn't be innocent. It would complicate some of this. But just because you were hurt by someone else, you can't then go find another person only indirectly connected to this whole thing and kill them. We'd say that's morally wrong. And so I believe human decency points it to be morally wrong, and definitely Christian doctrine, those who hold the Christian faith, should, I believe, very clearly see it's morally wrong. We're going to kind of go through these, and I'll probably repeat them at times because it's an important thing that I kind of came to as I really reviewed this issue, is that abortion is morally wrong. Number two, it's number three in the overall points, is that abortion is biologically inhumane. It is biologically inhumane. The simple facts of the biology of this, the science of it, the research of it, as you look at the development of a child, are that by 7 weeks, a living human being with a fetal heartbeat and the potential to feel pain is inside the mother, and killing them is inhumane in the extreme. It's a living being with the potential to feel pain. We don't know absolutely if they can yet or not, but it's a reasonable likelihood, who has a fetal heartbeat, and to on a biological level, to see that life, to recognize it, and then cause them that pain is inhumane. I don't think we don't do that in other areas. Why would we do that with a living human? I believe it's biologically inhumane. I guess another way of saying it is you could also say it's morally immoral or ethically immoral. You could also say it's biologically immoral. I said inhumane. The idea is, I think at our gut, when we recognize certain realities, when I think we have a general tendency to respect life, and that to just wantonly and thoughtlessly, or even I guess even if you had great motivations, if someone were to walk up to a nest of fertilized eagle shells, I assume that's how that all works. Maybe my lack of knowledge there will betray me, and smush them up and just crush them. I think many of us would have the sense something that's inhumane. That is morally wrong based on the biological reality. That is a living being. It's not the same as going and taking a stick and cutting it in half. That's an inanimate object. Living life demands a greater level of respect. And so I believe abortion is biologically inhumane, that when you actually look at the development and the reality and the complexity of that living life, that human being, and you think about then ending and killing them, I call that inhumane. If that's not inhumane, then what is? Number 4 in the overall thoughts, and these are my 3 key points, though, is that abortion is morally wrong. Abortion is biologically inhumane, and I believe that abortion is constitutionally unlawful. From the moment of conception, and certainly by the beginning of week 7, a unique living human being is inside the mother's womb, and I believe they are entitled to the same constitutional rights and protections of life and liberty as a premature baby 17 weeks later who is delivered via C-section. I believe that child at 7 weeks and 6 weeks, and for the moment of conception, but certainly as we tease into the political, by the beginning of that 7th week, is a unique and living human being, and I believe that they are entitled to the same constitutional protections. One of the things that's so crazy about the accusation that basically the claim that children can't feel pain until 24 weeks, and some on that side of the argument actually say, I think I've heard up, I think as late as 28 weeks, is that there are children who are born, who are delivered via C-section at 24 weeks, and like they're out in the world, they live. I don't think anyone would say, oh, that if you poke that child, they're not going to feel it. They don't feel pain. But in the secrecy or the closedness of the womb, where we can't see it, we're able to say these kind of things. But when you pull that living child out, if everyone says that's a baby, protect that baby, they have the rights to life and to liberty, they have constitutional protections. But that same baby in a similar state of development, earlier, but and definitely trending the same way towards life and full development, to say they don't, it's just they're earlier in that process because they're younger, they don't have the same protections. I believe that is kind of illogical. We have a constitutional responsibility to outlaw the killing of this human life. Like I said, I wanted to be more open and flexible in my views, but if we can't constitutionally agree that people who are alive have the right to stay alive and the right to be free, and that no one for any reason has the right to take away their life, if we can't agree on that, I just think we're at a very tough spot in our nation. It's such a fundamental and I think universally accepted idea that we don't take innocent human life, that to not protect it and to acknowledge that is, I believe, to violate the intent of the Constitution, to violate our most basic founding document that binds us as a nation. Hey everyone, a quick break from today's show. I just want to ask you, wherever you're watching or listening, to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. That'd be super helpful. It spreads the word, lets me know you're out there. And, this show, it takes work, and doing episodes, particularly like this, they're vulnerable and they're super helpful to me to clarify my thinking. I believe that they're helpful. I hope they're helpful to you. And if they are, would you help the show? Would you help me by subscribing, rating, and reviewing wherever you are watching and listening? And with that, I'm just going to jump right back in with thought number 5 about a federal abortion ban. And I'm just going to be real straight with you and let you know where I stand in my ideal personal political position that I wish we would take as a nation. And then we're going to kind of break that down and look at state next as well. I believe the government is entitled to entirely ban all abortions federally, with exceptions only for the life of the mother or the child. I believe that when you look at it from a moral standpoint, a biological reality standpoint, and a constitutional standpoint to protect the life and liberty of all human lives, and particularly, I guess in this case, you could say American-born or pre-born lives, I think the federal government has a strong standing point and an obligation to honor the Constitution to do a total ban with only the exceptions for the life of the mother or the child. This would naturally leave the states nothing to truly legislate because it would become the law of the land. And this is my personal position. This is where I stand here and today, and I assume for always, this is what I believe should be. Every day more from the moment of conception is a greater atrocity committed by our nation, and I'd welcome any federal or state laws that would put a maximum week limit on that atrocity. So, and I guess I feel myself even stumbling over my own words, because I do think that for politicians, and if I were ever a politician, and I'm going to break that down a little bit, they have a little bit more, they have some different responsibilities that they have to try to balance between as they make decisions. And there's a certain level of negotiation that is just a part of the world, because we don't rule by force, and we hopefully don't just totally crush the minority that we actually have. We hopefully rule, we lead and govern, maybe is the term I'm looking for, through some level of consensus. And so my personal and ideal position that I believe is totally sound is a total ban, and with the only exception I can conceive of for the life of the mother and the child. But if another politician can get a ban of any kind, and that's limiting the atrocities. Right now, there are states in the books with no term limits. And so to get limits on there at a federal level, to put a cap on this insanity at that one far end of the absolute latest we would allow as a federal government, I'm going to be in support of that, with the idea that we can bring it down later. That's what we do as a nation. We negotiate, we talk, and we adjust our laws as we adjust our understanding and even just the character and the heart of the nation, for better or for worse. The good news is that the general will of the people is in favor of life. And the question is pointing towards how early that should be protected, not how late it should be allowed to be terminated. I don't actually believe the heart of people is how late can we protect our right to kill an innocent human life, and prioritize the real impact it does have on the woman over the absolute and final impact, the deadly impact it has on the innocent human life within her. I don't think most people are trying to ask how late we can go. That's a radical view. I think most people, when they're faced with it, they're not in favor of a late term abortion. But then it's figuring out, okay, where is that limit? What can we agree on? My personal take is that to enact laws that allow for late-term abortions would, if Congress were to do that, or even states to do that. But I will stick with Congress. I think the general view of the whole nation. Some states may be super radical. I don't totally know. I think for Congress to pass something like that at the federal level would not reflect the general will of the people, which is good. It would only reflect the most radical, which is bad, generally speaking. And this is that tension that I would have to balance myself, where I actually in politics today and making these decisions, and that I'm going to try to give grace to our political leaders on, is that it's the job of the leader to listen and to lead. There's a responsibility in a representative government. They're elected representatives of the people to represent the will of the people, and not say you're going to do one thing and then do something entirely different. There's a point at which that becomes a bait and switch. It becomes a violation, really, of your oath and of your promise to the people. And so their job is to listen, but at the same time, it is to lead. And that's why we don't just have I think it would be a true total democracy or republic. I'm forgetting. It's not mob rule. We don't just take a poll every day on the general feeling of the people, and then that's the law of the day. No, we pick people, and then to some degree, we surrender control to them, and we say, we trust you. It's yours. You're going to have all the information. There's a certain moral responsibility on you. You're going to make a decision, and so lead. And so I can see someone saying, I'm going to lead us towards 100% ban. And I could see someone saying, we're going to do this in process, and we're going to go 24 weeks, 15 weeks, 7 weeks, total ban. And so there's going to be some grace there that I'm going to try to have. But where I stand, I can say it without having the pressure of being the policymaker, is that I am for a total ban. Here is some places that a politician could draw the line. The number one is the one that, for pro-lifers, it's our ideal. It would be at conception. It'd be a total ban on abortion except for the life of the mother or child. And I believe this is the most morally, biologically, and constitutionally correct. I think it's a political calculation that, once again, I don't think I'm not going to throw stones at people that add in the exceptions for rape or incest. That's the other exception that's commonly added in. I think it's presumably maybe done to try to build consensus. Maybe it's done out of compassion, but I don't morally believe that the killing innocent life because you were a victim is ever acceptable. And I don't think biologically it's like this non-issue. That's a real human life. And I think constitutionally, when it comes to life or death, we have to protect the person that's about to die over the person that may have very real and serious real world impacts from carrying a child to term. But we have to, I believe, side with the person whose actual literal life is on the line here. And so that's what would happen for a politician that supported a total ban at conception, and with just the exception of the life of the mother or the child. But if they added another exception, I could see that. It was and so forth. This wouldn't leave much room for the states, as I think I mentioned, but that's because there isn't really a lot of gray area in killing innocent humans. And that's just kind of what I learned. I wanted a situation where the federal government would be more liberal and the states could have more of a free market thing. But honestly, the most reasonable and consistent view is I think, for the federal government to just say, this is a constitutional issue at a national level. we don't kill innocent humans. If they don't do that, I think for political reasons or because of a patience to lead the people towards a direction and in a goal to try not to bring widespread fear or division or civil unrest, then they could move the date up. And in so doing, they allow for a murder. They allow for a killing of an innocent human life. They allow for an atrocity. But that is just the hard burden of governing. And those who are being governed and we're part of voting for our governance, it's a responsibility as citizens that we all bear. And we may end up putting into law something like this. One place we could put the law at the federal level would be after 6 weeks. And this is I think they call it the heartbeat bill in some states. They call it the 6-week ban. In other states, it's already been passed at the state level, and it's a very reasonable and logical place, especially for those that do not hold that. I think for some people, just for a wider, I'm trying to think how to say this, just a wider swath of people from different reasons who have different motivations for protecting that child within the womb. Some arguments that may be there from conception to the end of week 6, they're not there after week 6. And so we could do a federal abortion ban at the age of a fetal heartbeat, as we talked about. At week 6, there's a detectable cardiac activity, I think is the most liberal way of saying it. People that would be sort of maybe not very pro-life, but that sound, that cardiac activity, that fetal heartbeat, as we call it, is going to become a heart, from all my understanding. And that's detectable as early, I think, within the 5th week, the 6th week, and definitely by the end of the 6th week. And we know that there's the possibility of the baby feeling pain after that 6th week. And so this place where no further than beyond the 6th week would be a very reasonable place to put a federal ban. The same exceptions would be allowed. That's what I would suggest. The con of this is that we're still killing an innocent life. The pro, if you want to call it that, is that it limits the spiritual, the psychological atrocity done by our nation. I believe that abortion is an atrocity to and upon the murdered child. It affects that child. They're dead. It's an atrocity to the mother. And I'm using that atrocity, that word. I'm not focusing on putting a lot of blame or defining murder or some of that things that we would look at it sometimes in this. There is a soul ripping, a violation of the soul that goes on in the killing of an innocent life, and that affects the mother. And that is the general consensus of people. So many people, not everyone, but so many people that have abortions, is there's a pain, there is a regret, there is a shame. And I do not believe it's just societal. I believe it's a reflection of our humanity and of the reality of the world. And those doctors, some are doing it for maybe very bad reasons. Some of them are doing it for maybe the most noble reasons that they can think of. But I believe that there is a perhaps literal, but philosophical, or what's the term, blood on their hands. There is an atrocity, there's an evil that they have been a part of. And every day we can limit it is better. And this would be a place to limit it. The graphicness of the killing of innocent life every day that they develop, that they grow, and they grow in complexity, and they grow in their ability to feel pain, it just increases exponentially day after day. And so this would be a place to stop it. Though I don't think should not be the final place. The final place is a total ban. We don't kill innocent human lives. Another place that I think has a real chance in the next few years of being codified is a 15-week ban on abortions. That after, I might be getting my terms wrong here, at the beginning or perhaps the end of the 15th week, that no later than 15 weeks, that we would ban abortion. This is a place that I believe Senator Lindsey Graham actually had put in some legislation to try to get done. And I actually think that this has a chance to be done at a bipartisan level. And man, it couldn't be one day later, because this is that next threshold where, if I said that right, every day we can bring it down is good. Every day later up is bad. Because if you don't agree that children can feel pain at 7 weeks, then even more scientists, so from my understanding and the article I read, would say, well, they definitely can by 15 weeks. And so now we have an even more developed, even more complex, the operating, living human being who is even closer to the age of viability, who is feeling pain, and we're choosing to abort them. And so this would be a logical and more humane than is currently done place to stop the atrocity. Every day we go out later, it's just more of an absolutely horrific atrocity. And apparently, one article I read, a majority of the Americans are in favor of a 15-week ban. And this is actually from, once again, my research, where much of Europe and developing nations are. From my understanding, we have we have some of the latest term limits, age limits, week limits on abortion in the developed world, and some no limits. And I believe, as I think I have it in my notes, currently there are 9 states plus Washington, D.C., who have no gestational limit, according to the gutmocker.org, which I believe is a liberal website, as I was kind of reading about it and getting the information from them. So I don't think they're lying about it. They admit, and there are 9 states, and I think they may be proud of it. I don't know. I don't know of that for sure, that have no limit. That is not in accordance with general society. That is not both conservative, liberal nations, more secular, more Christian, whatever. And so getting this down to that place, I believe, is possible. The next place, and to me, perhaps the final place before we just go into absolute barbarism, and I think we're there from the day we're killing this human life, would be after 23 weeks. A federal ban on abortion at the age of viability or slightly lower would still actually stop late-term abortions that are beyond that are from my understanding, legal in 9 states plus DC. It's crazy how far we've allowed this to go. This would still be better than what we have today. A ban on all abortions, with the exception of the life of the child and the mother, at 24 weeks or later at the federal level. This is the outer limit of humanity, and even that's a stretch. And so on the federal level, these are some policies that I believe the government could or should take. If I saw them take this, I'd go, I get it, I understand it. I want a downward trajectory towards lower and lower limits to protect more and more innocent human lives. But I could see these. I'm not happy with 23 weeks. I feel that happier at 15. I feel happier at 6, and I feel like we finally actually have stopped this evil when we have a total ban at conception. Morally, I want all abortions to never happen, but legally, these are levels at which I think the nation might be able to agree. In the future, I hope our collective conscience and self-interest will allow us to reach a consensus as a nation that eventually eliminates all abortion except for the life of the mother or the child. That's my hope. I hope we can become a nation of people who value another's life and liberty at all costs and embrace personal sacrifice to preserve it. So that's my thought on the federal level. I'll be a lot quicker as we get towards our close on the state level. I'd originally thought that a lot of the decisions should sit with the states, but I realized that I feel like this is more of a federal thing because it's I believe that the innocent human life in the womb has a constitutional protection. So therefore, on the state level, I believe in the free market both of ideas and commerce. I actually like that as states we have different liberties and can try different things. It allows us to see what's working, what's not. It allows people to have a sense of mobility and freedom, that if they don't like the way the rules are in one state, the laws are in one state, they can move to a different state. And I like that. I think we get innovation and we get some bad ideas and we get some great ideas. But overall, I like the free market of ideas and commerce. And so the states should be allowed to legislate within the remaining scope allowed them by the federal laws. If the federal government does what I believe they should do, ultimately, eventually, there'd be a total ban. There's not much for the states to do. But if they choose the 6-week ban, the 15-week ban, or the 24-week ban, then states should be able to ban abortion at conception, or, unfortunately, based on my political beliefs, they should be, because I don't like that they can do this, but they should be allowed to allow it all the way up to the federal limit. I think that is the whole idea of kind of my political philosophy, and I'm learning, apparently, I think it's called federalism. I'm just understanding it is we're honoring states' rights, we're honoring their sovereignty as individual states, and the federal government's job is to say this is the outer limit of sanity, and this is the defining line for all 50. But then they have the right to operate within that, even if they make a call I disagree with, and so that goes both directions. I don't believe there's any constitutional right to kill an innocent life. So I don't think any state should be forced, and I think it's wrong that these judges are saying there's a constitutional right and over prioritizing the woman over the innocent child, when only one is actual life is at stake. I think that's a mistake, and the states should be allowed to ban abortion all the way at conception. I think it's constitutionally sound and accurate, both in many of their, I believe, state constitutions, I assume, and according to the our national constitution. I believe they should be able to have a total ban, except for the exceptions, and I believe that those who want it should be allowed to go up to the limit. And I just hope that eventually there's such a consensus that there's an alignment between the state and the federal laws, whatever, because we've just all eradicated abortion. Over the time, as we allow the states to work this out, if in the time because I doubt we're going to go to a total ban anytime soon at the federal level. So I think this is how it will play out. I hope the federal level keeps going down as collectively, as they lead and listen to the people, they bring that number down. But that means the states are going to have leeway, and I think they need, and I believe that the states need to man up, and particularly it's going to probably be conservative and Republican leaders and voters need to man up and woman up and fight peacefully and legally for the total protection of these innocent human lives, and within our states we need to work to have that total ban, and that we need to legally fight to protect. And if we need to change our state constitutions legally to do that, then let's go for that process. Let's aggressively within our states defend it. And if someone really, really doesn't like that, then they'll still have the ability to move into a different state and vice versa, while the federal government catches up with the consensus of the nation. And unfortunately, other people who are still in favor of abortions are going to be able to push up against that federal limit. And over time, we're going to see the results. And I think this is how it will actually play out. Some states will push up against the federal limits. Other states will push down towards actual sanity and the non-killing of human lives, the protection of human lives. And we'll see the results. And I believe that and I trust that there'll be a favor of God, and that there will be just economic and social proofs that those nations that protect life are better off than those who take life. And I hope that the free market of ideas, unencumbered, unshifted, will actually sway people over. There's more at stake here. There's more reasons why people may or not, and even spiritual reasons why around abortion. It's a very evil thing. And so I don't know that reason alone is ever going to win this thing. But I do believe in the free market of ideas, and I think we need to be praying for our nation, for all of this, state level, national level, local level. In conclusion, abortion is morally wrong, it's biologically inhumane, and it's constitutionally unlawful. I hope this has stretched your thinking and perhaps clarified your own answer to the question. And so I'll leave you with that. What's your moral, biological, and political policy on abortion? You can message me on social, comment wherever you're watching or listening. Love to hear your thoughts. It's an important conversation. It's a serious conversation, and I hope that it's been helpful to you today. And with that, once again, another way you could thank me and help the show out is rate, review the podcast, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. God bless you. God bless America. I'm going to be doing my part. I'm going to seek to remember to be praying for our nation, praying for these things. They're so important. Have a great day.